Good evening. This is Violette Haldane of the West Indian Foundation, and this is another one of our community coalition discussions. Today we are going to be talking about taxes. This is January 2021, and we will be talking about taxes. Our guests today are Ms. Laura O'Keefe from the Village for Families and Children, and she will be speaking to us about where you can go to get your taxes prepared for free and the process to get that done. We will also have Ms. Sharon Dixon Pay from Dixon and Company, who will be providing us with information needed for filing your individual and business taxes. And then we will have Ms. Kim Hawkins, president of HEDCO, and she will speak to us about the financial resources and help for small businesses and the criteria and the limitations and the documentation necessary for filing for that help. We're going to start with Ms. O'Keefe from the Village, and I'm going to hand it over to her. She will only be here for a short time, so if you have any questions while she's speaking, if you could just put them in the chat so maybe we can get them answered before she leaves. Ms. O'Keefe, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for coming and speaking to us on such short notice today. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Laura O'Keefe. I'm the director of the Financial Opportunity Center here in Hartford at the Village for Families and Children. Our organization oversees the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Campaign, or VITA, for the central and northeastern part of Connecticut. And we do that in partnership with United Way here locally. We also have partnerships with the Internal Revenue Service and many other, obviously, partner organizations and and others who make this campaign possible. We have been running for many years now, and in non-COVID times, we usually run about 26 tax site locations that span from the Hartford region all the way up the northeastern corridor. So we go basically up 84. Into the Wyndham, Willimantic area, and have tax sites all throughout that area, Manchester, Enfield, all those places. This year obviously has presented us with some interesting new challenges, as it has, I'm sure, most of us. And so we are moving operations online. So this year, how families will get connected with us is basically they're going to go to 211, the same as they normally would. So you just dial 211, and then an operator there should be able to direct individuals where to go and how to access. There is a link that is going to be available. It is to a system that is called JotForm. So it's J as in Jerry, O-T-F-O-R-M, JotForm. Is going to house our link. On the link is going to be the intake form to be able to get in the door for VITA. And then they are going to also upload documents into the JotForm platform. The JotForm platform is secure, and it will be accessed by our IRS trained and certified volunteers that will go in there, access the information in the same way that they would as if someone was coming in person. They will access the information, and then we will use our regular system, which is called TaxSlayer, to actually prepare the tax returns. When that process is over with, we actually will get back in contact with the taxpayer, and we are going to do a quality review. And this is something that we always do, whether it's in person or not. We want to make sure that we are looking at the tax return with the taxpayer, making sure that there are no errors in the return, and just making sure that everything looks right to the taxpayer. We then sign it, and then we'll send it to the Internal Revenue Service for processing. Okay, so that's essentially how that goes. Again, families can call 211 to get access to that. And we can also send people electronically to a website. And this website is 211ct.org/tax help. So again, it's 211ct.org/tax help. And when they get in there, they're going to look for the link that has Central and Northeastern Connecticut on it, and it will list our areas. It'll be Hartford, Tolland, and Windham counties is the link that's serviced by our program. Okay. So just a little bit about sort of how this fits into the larger framework of the village and our service delivery. So we have, obviously, for those of you who are familiar with the village, you know that we are a behavioral and mental health organization. Finances is probably one of the biggest areas of stressor in people's lives, and especially now with COVID in the scenario, it's even exacerbated to a greater extent. So our department actually helps people become empowered financially. We really want to help people learn not only about their tax returns, but how to budget, how to deal with credit situations, housing issues, all of those pieces. So, we have coaches. It's free of charge to access our services. We have financial coaches, career coaches, intake specialists that are going to help people connect to benefits, and also the tax program. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of information about sort of the framework in which the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program lives. Normally for VITA, we do about 9,200 tax returns a year. We have 300 usually plus volunteers that work with us in the program, all trained and certified with the Internal Revenue Service. And last tax season, the one before our COVID season, we brought back over $20 million in refunds and credits to the families that we served, which are then reinvested into the communities where we live, work, and worship. So I think that that's, certainly a great impact, and we want to help people not only access those refunds and credits that they're eligible for, but also help people think through what's next, right? How do I learn to save? How do I learn to prepare for my future, for my children's future? And, really, give thought to, utilizing these tax credits in a way that's going to help propel people forward. And so that's really what our program is all about. So I will leave it available for questions if anybody has any at this point. And if not, I wanted to also, I see that my contact information is in the chat. So please feel free to reach out to the organization and we can answer any questions that you might have.
I do have two questions that came to me. One is there a criteria for them to use your services? And the other is, how do you deal with individuals that have problems with digital literacy or may not have access to a computer?
Sure. So the first one is for the VITA program. We usually use the Earned Income Tax Credit guideline. So that this year has bumped up to about 56,000 and change. So we roughly say 57,000 or up to $57,000 a year is the cap for the amount of income, household income, that we will accept in terms of filing a tax return with VITA. That being said, we do have some flexibility there. If people have experienced a job loss, are having a situation, they've gone through a recent divorce, something's happened financially to them, and they make a little bit more than that, we would certainly have the flexibility to be able to make a decision about doing a tax return for someone that had a situation that's made it challenging to get to pay to have their tax return prepared somewhere else. So certainly that's what we like to do, but again, up to about $57,000 is the range for that. For coaching services, we follow the ALICE guidelines, so the stability income guideline. So it's pretty broad. Roughly it's going to be between sort of the tax guideline, which is the $57,000, up to about the mid $60,000 range for our coaching services. So those are the two income guidelines for our program. In terms of, I'm sorry, what was the second question again?
Digital literacy or access to computers.
Yes, digital literacy. So when people call 211, we do understand that not everybody's going to be able to access, or either they don't have equipment or they struggle to use the equipment sometimes. So if that is the case, then 211 can help direct people to a very, very limited amount, but we do have some of a drop-off methodology. So there's like 1 to maybe 3 locations that will be available during tax season, and we're still working to finalize those sites. But we are going to have a couple locations where people can go and drop off tax documents, and then they would leave them there and then pick them up when they are finished. And an even smaller, I think there's going to be one location which is going to be up in the South Windsor area that is going to have an in-person, very limited schedule for in-person. But what we are trying to do, because of COVID and because we do not want to spread anything further than it needs to go, we are trying to keep that very limited. So if people can access the online services, we want to direct people to the online services first, and then if that's not going to be possible, then we would move to other options. But again, in keeping with the guidelines, state guidelines, federal guidelines, in terms of having big long lines of individuals, or having too much face-to-face contact, we're trying to keep that as limited as possible.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any additional questions. So
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing that information with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, thanks. Okay, I'm going to move it on next to Ms. Sharon Dixon-Pay. Sharon?
How are you?
Okay, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So I do have a screen to share. Hopefully this works. You know how technology is, right?
I do. Sharon's going to be talking to us about filing, the documentation, and things we need to consider when we're doing our business filings. Can you get it to work, or do you need me to help?
I just have to do the share screen and then change the okay. It's sharing.
Okay.
There you go. Okay. So I'm Sharon Dixon-Pay from Dixon & Company, and actually this time of year is one of our busiest and most exciting because of all the people we meet and all the situations we encounter. We're here to talk today about paying taxes. Basically, doing business means paying taxes. We're going to talk about the steps so that you are prepared to pay the right amount of taxes on time, thereby not overpaying, because you have penalties and interest and there's liens and things of that nature. The main theme of my conversation today is that accounting all year long is much less painful and more accurate than trying to pull everything together at the last minute. And I'm compelled to issue a bit of a warning here that the state of Connecticut and the IRS have broad powers to charge penalties and interest if they see anything that looks like some sort of irregularity. I'm not even talking about fraud. We'll put that aside. We're just talking about irregularities and things like errors or not filing on time. As a matter of fact, one of their major pushes these days is the people that have not filed in a while, and they're going after them pretty heavily. So let's move on. Key aspect of all of our businesses is that startups, existing businesses alike, we all have skills and knowledge and desires to provide service and products. We'd rather be doing that than doing tax returns. We all have customers and money flows into our business. We all have vendors and bills and money flowing out. And we actually would like to have a little something to maintain our lifestyle and something left over to maybe survive and thrive and grow our business. If you had any money put aside before COVID hit, that was really a good thing. It helped you last a little longer than maybe some of your neighbors. But still, we all have to pay taxes. Owner-operated or small businesses, they have a lot of requirements. So when you'd rather just be talking to your clients or making what you make or advising your clients and doing that, you have these other requirements that are necessary for you to stay in business. Accounting is just a tool. It's one of those things that if you have in your toolkit, it can help you move your operation forward. It can help you understand what your income is, like we talked about, from your customers, and what your expenses are. And I'm sure all of you are very familiar with these terms. And hopefully, by having this review, it will help you understand that it really is not that difficult to do your tax reporting if you know what you're doing. And in this situation, many people are in a situation where they have to kind of decide what they want to pay for. If they really don't know what they're doing, or if they are really unsure about what they're doing, they can either pay somebody to help them or go get some help with free services and things of that nature, or they can pay the interest and penalties. So, you know, it's kind of really either or, because we all have to pay taxes. One of the key things about paying taxes is you have to have key information to fill out the forms. And I put here, don't ignore the mail. It doesn't matter if it's going to the post office and so-and-so didn't pick it up and all that kind of stuff. A viable excuse to the IRS for not filing on time is not, I repeat, is not, I didn't get the mail. They'll say, oh, and you'll still have the penalties and interest. Okay. So this 8-point checklist, I hope, will help you as much as it's helped me and help some of my clients in terms of dealing with their taxes every year. Basically, to stay a little bit organized and really understand what we're doing. So these are the points. You have to know when you have to file. When do you file? You have to know what forms to file. You have to know where to file and how to do it. You have to know your income, because that's kind of the major metrics for filing your taxes. You have to know your expenses, because that's the major point to keep you from overpaying your taxes. You need to cross-check. You have several areas to cross-check, and we'll go over those. You need to submit the forms and keep your records. And this is a part that I usually do with my clients that is very important. We think about what happened this year and prepare for the coming year. So let's go through it. When do you file? Each year, like right now, actually, you need to list the due dates by month for your various federal, state, and local filings. Now, I am speaking in this presentation more to those of you that might be doing this yourself, or might just have someone taking your information and filing it, but you've had to put everything together. It's probably a good idea for even those that have someone preparing their taxes to know these things. So, first of all, corporate taxes are generally due on April 1st. It's a little different than before. Partnership taxes are due on March 15th. And these really apply to those partnerships where there are 2 or more partners. A sole member LLC or a sole proprietor who has chosen, a sole member LLC who has chosen to file their taxes on a Schedule C in a 1040, or right along with their personal taxes, that's due April 15th. There are other state forms that you have to consider and you have to keep up with: your business entity taxes, your payroll tax filings, your labor department filings if you have employees. Many small business people have just themselves and maybe one other person as a payroll, on payroll, and formally as an employee. If that's the case, there are forms and things that must be filed every year. And then there is your local property tax. And most of us think about that kind of naturally, because we always know that we have to pay our car taxes and our house taxes and things of that nature. Well, there are property taxes on businesses as well. And for those of you who have forgotten that and then gotten the penalty, you know, you'll remember it going forward. The next thing is, what forms will you need? whether or not someone is preparing your taxes, you must be sure that they know what forms they need to prepare. And it goes beyond just the annual forms that you have, like your 1065 for your partnership or your 1120 for your corporation, even a small corporation. These things require certain information to be kept and certain reporting. So they really need to understand what forms need to be prepared. If someone is supposed to be sending you information, then it's really your responsibility to follow up if you don't receive them. And I find that if they're supposed to be sending you something to verify an expenditure or to verify that they sent you some money or whatever it is, if you attempt to get that information about 1 to 2 weeks before your due date, then you won't have a problem. You also need to get information from others that might be just information forms. Some people, if you're an employee and you have a business as well, getting your W-2s, or if you're a business with employees, then you may need to send out required forms like the W-2s or the 1099s to all your vendors who you paid over $600. The other important thing, if you have a partnership with at least 2 people, you have to have your K-1s. Now, I mention all of these because I find that in this age when we are looking at opportunities for funding, these are the forms that we need to have in order to substantiate some of our expenses. So if we are prepared when we are looking to file the forms, we're prepared to recognize, oh, this is information that I'm going to need going forward. I may need to give it to the bank. You may need to give it to HEDCO. You may need to give it to the state to substantiate expenses in order to get forgiveness. You may need to give it to the SBA for the same reason. PPPs actually rely upon things like what your W-2s were and what your 1099s were. And now where to file. I'm moving along pretty quickly, but these are kind of the high level things to keep in mind as you're going forward. The basics that happen every year, whether it's 2019 and everything was going wonderful, or it's 2020 and COVID hit and everything was a mess and everything in your life was affected. There are going to be some other things that you will need to consider and file because of some of the funding that happened for COVID, or because of some of the changes in laws that affected how you withheld money for your employees, for example, or how you allowed your employees to withdraw from their 401ks. All kinds of things are going on for 2020. So I'm really talking about kind of the way to be prepared year in and year out. So in terms of where and how to file, one question to ask yourself is, do I need to have some sort of online account to file? Going to My Connect with the state of Connecticut, their new system, fairly new system, allows you to file very quickly your sales forms, for example, and other forms for the state. You need to know what forms need to be mailed. You need to know if they actually are on time, if it gets to the recipient by the due date, or is it okay if the item is dated by the due date and they receive it later? You'll also need to recognize how and think about how you have proof if something gets lost. So we suggest to clients, if you're having to mail things, to always get some sort of return receipt I know that the post office does have the tracking devices, and you get that little green receipt thing that says something was mailed. You need to write right then, when you get that, write on there where your item went, um, who it was addressed to. And I always like to make a little notation saying my last name in 1040 or 941s or something like that on the little receipt, so that should you need to prove that you mailed something, you have something. I'm old-fashioned, though. I like to use that green card that gets pasted to the item that someone has to take off and sign and then mail back to me. So I like those. But, you know, the post office has various ways to do that, and you can ask them. You also need to know who needs to get a copy. So before you either do something online or you mail something off, you need to have a copy of it. And usually when you're doing it online, there's some place on the final screen that is a click on to say, here's your copy, or print the form, or something like that. That's important. And then, of course, how you store your records is key, because you need to be able to find them should something get lost or should there be a question. Now we're looking at the information that goes into the forms. And of course, income is income you earned all year long. And it includes everything that you earned from selling or from investing, and it needs to be reported on the form in the appropriate way. There are usually specific boxes for the things that that the IRS and the state think are important. So following the instructions on the form is very key. Of course, if you're having someone help you, then it's helpful that both people know what's necessary, have reviewed the instructions. And you know, when they say to read all the instructions before you fill out the form, read all the instructions before you fill out the form, really. Because they've had a lot of people not do that, and it results in forms getting rejected and things of that nature. And that, my friend, is a very, very difficult waste of time. The next thing is you need to recognize how you prove your numbers if necessary. So if you have a cash receipt or any kind of sales journals, you've got Square receipts or MasterCard receipts and things of that nature, your bank account, and you may have actually reported sales every quarter to the state. So you need to have those numbers as well and see how they tick and tie, how they cross-check with each other. And I'll talk about that a little later. Of course, you also have your PPP loans and your SBA loans. And the Connecticut CARES program is the name of the state program. All of these programs require that you have some indication of loss year over year. So, for example, for the last Connecticut CARES grant, you had to certify that you had more than a 20% loss between 2019, for 3/4 of 2019 and 3/4 of 2020. That means you needed to have these records all year long so that you could identify what income was related to each one of those periods. And lastly, how you store your records is very important. I do keep repeating that. The next is your expenses. These are expenses you paid all year long. Now, how you account for them and how you prove them, if necessary, can be pretty straightforward. You have your bank accounts, you have various payroll reports, you have, of course, your accounting system. You may have individual receipts for fairly big ticket items. You may have a system of recording your receipts. Say you only use a certain card for certain expenses, and so that credit card statement can help you prove transactions. All of these things are important should you get challenged with your numbers. And so what I usually do is we start from those numbers. We start from what we can prove, because then we avoid problems later on. There's standard things that everyone remembers. Payroll, you can deduct, rental expenses, insurance, supplies, the actual products you use in business. Many of these things are eligible expenses for some of these loan and funding programs. Some of them are not. So having clear records of what they are will be very helpful. And they clearly relate to the deductions you can take against the income you made so that you're not overpaying your taxes. These are some things that we've found over the years that are kind of overlooked. People just don't think about them in the course of their business. Some kind of dues that you're paying um, to associations or marketing or things of that nature. Software subscriptions. You pay for your Sage products, your QuickBook products. You pay for being able to accept credit cards, things of that nature. So those are all items that you need to have categorized properly. Mileage, which is from your business to your customers. And if your business is in your home, it's still from your business to your customers. It's not from your house to your business, but it is from your business to your customers. And there are a couple of ways to take that deduction. Training costs, um, advertising costs. Locally, many times we will support an advertising booklet, for example, put an ad in a booklet, and we just forget about that $2,500, $200 for that ad. Those things are advertisements, and you could keep good records about what you're spending and be able to take deductions. Cell phone and internet and cable. And really when I mean, usually if you're in any kind of office where you have to have internet, or any kind of business where you have to have internet, you also probably have some sort of cable service. And sometimes it's been very helpful during COVID for, say, barbershops to have a cable service for the waiting customer. They can only have 3 people in the shop, and there's one person that is waiting, and so they've put in some additional services so that they'll keep their clientele. Uh, many businesses offer Wi-Fi, for example. So these are expenses you need to think about. Cleaning services. Many times we don't think about that we've wiped down counters or had to clean specific items in our businesses, and those are expensive to do. Certainly during COVID, for many of us to reopen, we had to have a protocol for how we would clean. And so that becomes an expense. And then of course, security. Um, and what I'm talking about is the cost of things like ADT, and other services to monitor your business or your business location. Um, Even if it's something like Simply Safe, I think it is, where you just have a monthly, once you buy the system, you have a monthly expense. The keys are, how will you prove your numbers if necessary? How will you get your PPP forgiveness? You need to be able to show eligible expenses up to a certain amount. How will you show compliance with the SBA? If you've received an SBA loan, remember that the loan is supposed to be for certain purposes. And they have a fairly long look back to see what you have spent. It is absolutely, should never be surprising when the state or the federal government either gives you a call or knocks on your door to conduct an audit. How you store your records, of course, is important. You'll never know when you need them. I mentioned earlier cross-checking. So you do sales tax filings all year long. You figured that out, and you do those sales tax filings. Then you get to the end of the year, and you're adding up all your sales, and your sales tax filings were higher than the sales you have. Well, why is that? You need to think about what happened and why is that the case. Um, if the reverse happens, once again, you need to know why is that the case. If your sales tax filings are significantly lower than your total sales that you're seeing at the end of the year, then there is something that probably needs to be corrected. Payroll and your 941s that you have to issue quarterly, and your W-2s. All of these numbers should match, because the 941s are based on your payroll and your W-2s are based on your payroll. So if there are significant differences between that reporting and what you're going to put on your current or on your annual form, then that needs to be investigated. Same goes for 1099s and contractor expenses. And finally, your profit and loss statement is pretty essential for owner-operated small business people, because it's the sheet that shows you kind of the total of what we're talking about. It shows you all your income and it shows you all your expenses. However you decided to calculate that number all year long, that's the statement that will show your annual results. And of course, you can do it on a more frequent basis, but having that statement will help you understand what your business is doing. You know, many times someone will come in and they'll say, well, I think I made about X dollars. And then we get into actually what the expenses are and actually what the income is, and it's substantially more because they were able to generate more income from what they were doing, and their bank accounts showed that there was more income. And what they thought was expenses, or how much they thought they had spent on something, it wasn't the case. So having records available to you all year long helps you manage your business as well. As I said here, you need to know why the information is different, and there may be some differences that are okay, but you need to know why. You need to checking the form for completeness and accuracy, and whether or not the form is filled out according to the instructions are all important ways to cross-check your results and your forms. And then we get to submission. You submit the form as instructed. Remember I said early on, they always say read the instructions before completing the form. Well, you're going to read the instructions before completing the form, and you're going to read the instructions again after completing the form, because there'll be key information about how you have to submit the form and how you need to do it at a particular time. It'll hopefully you'll be able to easily find what some of the deadlines are and what the criteria for meeting the deadline is. If you're going online, like I mentioned earlier, get copies of your online filings. Fortunately, with the state of Connecticut, you can go back several years. I believe it's 5 right now, and you can get old copies if you'd like. But that can be convenient, but a bit annoying if you need to answer an audit, or you need to answer an IRS letter or a Department of Revenue Services letter. And lastly here, submit the forms on time. Yes, you are pressed, you're trying to get a lot of things done, there's a lot of information floating around, there's a lot of things that you need to consider when you're filing your forms, start early enough so that you can file your forms on time. And I know for some of us, we remember the old days when on time meant getting it to the post office so that the postman standing outside the post office down in the meadows could grab your form and postmark it before midnight. That used to be an annual ritual that we don't have to do anymore. We file online, we file the forms, and we can stay home at night. So there are usually late penalties. And so if you feel that, oh, okay, look, it's late, I'm okay with the penalty. Remember that the penalties are usually imposed if you owe money. So that means you're owing, you're paying the penalty, and you're paying the interest. To me, that's called overpaying and wasting money. And lastly, next year's preparations. You know, each year when you file your annual returns, you're already started in the year. You know, when there are things that are due January 31st, you've already had a month of activity. Things that are due in March or April, you've had several months of activity already. So being able to kind of make a course correction if in fact you found that the annual reporting process was absolutely horrendous. You couldn't find numbers, you couldn't find your IDs, you had to keep resetting passwords, the forms arrived in the mail, but you couldn't find the mail. Maybe you did file on time, that's great, but maybe it was painful. And heaven forbid, you get the form back because there needs to be corrections. And it's difficult to understand what's being corrected. All of these things you need to review a bit and say, what am I going to do better? Review how you get your information all year long and how you keep your records. I know I keep saying that over again. How do you keep your records? And you might consider if you need help. So that's the end of my preparation. Oh, I did have one other thing I wanted to add. We found over the years that if you, I'm sorry, let me go back to it. We found over the years that people don't have equal access to professionals in accounting and finance, investment and money management. And these professionals can help you succeed in business. And it really doesn't matter if you're starting out or if you've been in business for a long time. Being able to have access to these kinds of professionals is really, really pivotal to being able to move to the next level, to grow, or to even create a plan for sustainability where you keep maintaining your business year after year. Funding becomes an issue though when businesses aren't prepared. And I find that unfortunately there is a lack of culturally and linguistically prepared people to help business people, to help community business people, thereby creating a real disadvantage. So you don't really know what you don't know. You ask questions, but you're not really answering enough questions. You're getting information, but perhaps information about certain opportunities doesn't become available to you. I found even tonight, attending this seminar and listening to the woman before me, amazing amount of information, and they've been doing it for years. You really need to be able to connect in and have people who can give you insight, information, direction, and maybe even direct you to funding sources should you need them. Unfortunately, when limited funding becomes available, these systemic disadvantages mean that community business people who are not prepared miss opportunities. And when you file your forms on tax forms late, When you don't know what your income is, when you don't know what your expenses are, you're really not prepared.
Thank you, Sharon. I
Thank
think
you.
that's a perfect segue to Ms. Hawkins, who is here to share with us some of the financial resources and help for small businesses. And maybe, you know, she might have the opportunity to talk to us and tell us if her staff is culturally diverse. Ms. Hawkins?
Yes, good evening to everyone.
Thank you, Sharon.
Hi.
Good evening. How are you? It's good to be able to have a conversation with you again and share with you some of the opportunities that are available for small businesses with regards to funding and other opportunities. So again, I am with HEDCO, and we are a non-traditional bank. With the way things have been over the last year with COVID and how it has impacted our businesses, it's very important that you take heed to what Sharon said in terms of how you go about putting together your financial information, doing your taxes and all of those things that are necessary to present to a lender or to a grantor in order for you to be able to possibly qualify for either loans or grants. And so to that end, I'll just give you a highlight as to what's going on right now with opportunities for our small businesses. There is another round of PPP coming out through the SBA, and it opened up on January 19th for the banks to be able to now start lending, and that process closes on March 31st, 2021. So there's not a large window in terms of being able to apply for these loans. And so I would recommend that if there are any small businesses who are out there who did not apply for the first round of funding, that you have hopefully taken advantage of being able to reach out and get assistance to get your paperwork in order to now hopefully be able to apply for the second round of funding. So there's an opportunity there to apply for the PPP forgiveness program. There is not much that has changed from the first round to the second round with regards to the necessary documentation that's going to be required. But I will say that some of the small changes that they made were with regards to the amount of employees that you have. With the first round of PPP, you had to have no more than 500 employees. With this second round, it's 300. With this second round, you have to show a 25% loss quarter to quarter. And so as Sharon indicated, if you had a certain number in 2019, you're going to compare that same quarter to 2020 and be able to show that there's been a loss during that time frame. So if you are in need of assistance as a small business to be able to qualify for this particular program, I would recommend that you reach out to HEDCO. I would recommend that you reach out to the Black Business Alliance, the Small Business Development Center, SAMA, and also there's one other, the Women's Entrepreneurial Center. We are all agencies that are working very closely to be able to help these businesses understand what the requirements are and then also help them to work through that process. One of the things that we found out is that if businesses don't have a relationship with a bank, it becomes more difficult for them to get through the system. And so that's why we're here to help them to hopefully navigate that opportunity for them to now form a relationship with a bank. And if not a bank, with some of the other institutions that are now on board to be able to assist in providing these particular grants or forgivables, hopefully at the end of the process. So I think that's the important thing to know right now. Again, right now it's open. It closes on March 31st of 2021. And you have to have been in business for at least a year to be able to qualify for these funds. So if you're a startup business, unfortunately, you don't qualify for this particular funding source, but there are other opportunities that we can talk about. There is another program that's out there that is a grant program that is with the Women's Business Development Council. And I'm sharing this information. It's not all HEDCO because it's important for our small businesses to know that there are opportunities out there. As we said, we don't always know where everything is. And so here's an opportunity for you to know that this is a grant program. It's up to $10,000. It's called an equity match grant program. And there are some requirements for that program. So I would direct you to go to the Women's Business Development Council's website. Take a look at what the requirements are. They require you to be in business at least 2 years, and there's some other things that go along with that. But again, it's a grant program. You may have to match whatever that grant amount is for you to be able to participate in this program, but a grant, an opportunity for you to be able to take it, look at where you are. We know how COVID has impacted everyone, and these are opportunities for us to now look at how we might need to pivot our businesses. What are some of the things that we're going to need to do to be able to address where we are with the COVID? We know that COVID is not going to go away anytime soon. And so what do we need to take advantage of while we can to be able to support our businesses, maybe even come away with some new ideas and tactics that we might be able to use to build our business up. But it's important that we stop, pause, and take a look at where we are, what it is we can do to better our opportunities to be able to stay in business, to stay successful, to hang in there at least until things have changed. And here are some of these opportunities to be able to do that. We're looking at, a new day in terms of how technology is playing a role in our small businesses. And so how are we looking at that? Are we able to be as competitive as we have been without these opportunities for the new technology upgrades? And those are the kinds of things that we're talking to small businesses about and trying to make sure that we have a good understanding of where you are, what it is you think you need to do to be able to make that pivot, to be sustainable, and to be able to bring 1 or 2 employees back. COVID has definitely taken the advantage of some businesses to be able to thrive, but it has created other opportunities for newer businesses. And so we have to look at that and determine where we are in that whole sphere of business operation. And so as a part of the services that HEDCO provides, we don't have grants at this time, but we are an SBA micro lender, which allows us to work with individuals and small businesses and startups. So if there are some startups or entrepreneurs who are interested in starting a business, we are capable of working with you even through this pandemic to look at what that plan might be, what it is you're looking to do, how impactful do you think it's going to be in terms of your ability to survive over the next year, possibly. And so we have the ability to work with those small businesses. We have dollars to lend. We have technical assistance that we provide for free. We have the ability to train you in certain acumen in terms of, looking at where you are, what your cash flow needs are going to be, how are you going to incorporate certain things into your business. And so we're really a resource to say, let's stop, let's take a look at where we are, let's readjust, let's decide what makes sense going forward, and what are the resources that you need to be able to do that. And then how can we identify those resources for you? Business is going to continue to go. There are going to be some successes, there are going to be some failures, but we want to mitigate as much of that as we can in terms of failures by identifying where the weaknesses are, where the abilities are to show us up, and how we go about, just continuing to do business in this new environment. And so there are grants available, as I said, in some instances. There's the PPP that is now available. And then we're here. And when I say we, HEDCO and other entities are out here to really be able to walk with you, to hold your hand, to have that discussion, and be able to understand where it is you want to go and how we might be able to assist you in getting there. One of the key components of anything is your bookkeeping. You have got to understand what your numbers are. You have got to be able to pull those numbers out at any given time. And so that accounting component is critical. We need to know what a profit and loss is for your business. We need to be able to understand that you know what that profit and loss is, so that when we're having these conversations, you understand where you have been able to make the most impact and where you're not making an impact. So when it's time for an infusion of cash or there's grant opportunities, you can explain to a lender or to a grantor exactly what it is and why you need it and where you see that going. So it's important right now that as we deal with the climate that we're in, that we take a look at our small businesses. We take a look at those businesses who have been left out of the cycle of being able to take advantage of some of these funding opportunities, and determine how we can help them. We will walk you through the process. We will hold your hand as much as it needs to be held. And if you need assistance from a Dixon and Company, if you need assistance from other resources, we will connect you with them so that those documents are put together in a manner in which we all know will be acceptable to any lender that you're going to have to provide this documentation to. And with everything now being virtual and or with technology, everything is now being uploaded. And so are you aware of how to upload documents? And if you aren't, then we'll talk with you about how that happens, and even do it with you, so that again, you're not left out of an opportunity because you're lacking in some way. So it's important that we have those conversations. It's important that we understand where you are. It's important that we take advantage of the opportunities that are out there, identify the resources that are available to you, and then work with you to be able to take advantage of those resources. And understand that there's a window, and that window closes very quickly on us because we're usually scrambling to try to pull documents together instead of, as it's been said, taking care of those documents as we go along. So let's look at how we address doing business. Let's look at how we go about making sure that we have the proper documentation. We have consultants who are available, every day of the week to talk with you about that, to walk with you through that. Even in COVID times, we will come out to your business so that we can sit down with you and have that discussion to make sure that you understand exactly what it is you need and how you need to go about being able to take advantage of these opportunities. So I just say that we know that we're in the struggle, but we know that there's hope and there's opportunity. And we are here to be that resource to help you with that, and or direct you to resources that you need to be able to assist you in any manner that we can. So I look forward to our continued work in the community. I look forward to our being able to be a resource for our small businesses, our new businesses, our existing businesses, and just again being able to take advantage of the things that are out there right now that our businesses can use in times of this pandemic, because most of us have used up all of our reserves. It's been a year's time now, and there have been grants that have been given out, but they haven't been sustainable grants. And so what do we do to be able to sustain ourselves? And that's where we are to have that conversation with you. So I thank you for your time. And, if there's any questions, I certainly will entertain them, but it's important that we understand that we need to act and act quickly so that we can take advantage of the opportunities that are out there for our small business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. I'm going to, there are a few questions, so I'm going to ask if the audience does not mind staying about 10 minutes just so we can go through some of these questions. Ms. Hawkins, the loans that you talk about, are they available to nonprofits or only for-profits?
The loans through the PPP are available for nonprofits as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Dixon, 2 questions for you. The nonprofit filing deadline, is it still May 15th?
For those that are have a calendar year end, yes, it is.
Okay. And the second question is, Connecticut Leave Paid Program is a new law. The Connecticut Leave Paid Program.
Yes.
Do you have any information about that you can share with us?
The the Connecticut paid leave program is a program where a small amount is deducted from each employee and is then remitted to the paid leave authority. And within a year, it's going to take a year, employees would be able to go to that fund to get coverage for some paid leave. One of the and it's a requirement of all employers, those that are classified as sole proprietors or single member LLCs, quote unquote, small businesses. They can make the choice to be part of it. However, when they do make that choice, they have a 3-year commitment to stay in the program, or their penalties and all kinds of other great stuff. It went into effect on January 1st. Any of the payroll companies, if you are using a payroll company, they will have already started taking that tiny contribution out. And the first remittance, I believe, is March. And my understanding is that they will remit it. If you are the one doing your payroll, then the calculations have to be done so that just like you do Social Security and you do Medicare, you have to take this little, and state income tax, you have to take this little bit also, and you can't keep that money. You have to send it to the paid leave authority.
Thank you. And one last question, and this is for Ms. Hawkins. Do you have to be a woman-owned business to qualify for the Women's Business Development Funds?
What their website says is that you have to be woman-owned / minority-owned business. So I'm not sure how they categorize that, but normally that means it's woman-owned or minority-owned. And so a minority woman is a woman-owned business. So I would say that I would ask that question of them, but reading that, it would say, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman-owned business.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a woman, but it has to be a woman or a minority.
A minority, right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I think those are all the questions that were in the chat to me. And in the chat, I did include everyone's contact information, the name of their company and their name in the email that was provided.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. I appreciate everyone on the call who spent the time with us tonight. And as I was saying at the beginning, these videos will also be aired on Hartford Public Access TV. So I appreciate everyone being here tonight, and these will be airing in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.